Got to the M's in the yellow pages under moving and storage. There was a small piece of paper.
American movers and storage.
We both kind of looked at each other and we knew that's where it was. He had everything in a moving and storage locker.
They decided to canvass storage facilities in Alexandria, Virginia, starting with the one nearest DeBartolaben's apartment.
I, being somewhat familiar with that location, knew that there were several storage units in the area within a few blocks of the apartment. So my function was to visit each of these storage units and attempt to determine whether this person that we had now identified as James DeBartoleben had rented any units in any of the storage units. As it turned out, the first storage unit that I went to got a hit.
The clerk told the agents she had been waiting for them.
As a matter of fact, her comment to me was, I was sort of wondering when the police would come by and ask about this guy.
It's right here.
One of their renters, a man named Jones, was up to no good, she said.
It's creepy.
The clerk remembered. One night, Jones left his locker open with the light on.
Lockpicking tools.
When she went to shut it off, she saw what she thought were burglary tools.
Locked up my home.
Person here.
When shown DeBartoleben's picture, the clerk identified him as Jones.
Yeah, Mr. Jones. This man.
Go get a warrant. Call for backup.
Investigators believe they may have found DeBartoleben's printing plant. They obtained a search warrant and returned to the storage locker. When they opened it, they were surprised to find that it did not contain the printing press. Nothing about this investigation was easy.
The very first thing that struck me when we opened the door was a set of red lights and blue lights and a siren, all designed with cigarette lighter plugs to operate off of a car cigarette lighter.
The locker was filled with the same type of items found in DeBartoleben's car, only on a much bigger scale. The agents recovered box after box of counterfeit $20 bills. Almost $50,000 worth.
We did find what we were looking for as far as evidence of counterfeiting. We found counterfeit money, we found plates and negatives, but we also found items that led us to believe that we were looking at evidence of other crimes.
The storage locker contained more phony police badges, fake identity cards, books on surveillance, and a number of weapons.
It appeared that he was a police impersonator. The question is why? Why was he a police impersonator? We thought he was just passing counterfeit money. So we started thinking real hard, like, what do we have here?
As agents confiscated the evidence, they knew counterfeiting was the least of DeBartoleben's crimes. The disturbing thing was, whatever he was doing it full time. They took the evidence back to their offices to be processed. They hoped the boxes held something that would give them some idea of what he was doing. Special Agent Mertz began by reading some of the hundreds of DeBartoleben's notes stored in the boxes.
He was a prolific note writer. He'd get up in the morning and say, what are the 5 things I have to do today? And he'd write them down. And so there were little tiny slips of paper, 3x5 cards, little post-it notes, so you name it.
Late into the night, agents cataloged the evidence. Unfortunately, DeBartoleben's notes offered no clues as to the whereabouts of his press. Agent Mertz discovered some audio tapes inside one of the boxes. He decided to play one of them.
I thought, well, maybe since he's such a prolific note writer, maybe there's something, you know, he's so secretive, maybe there's something on this tape. So I took the tape and I just stuck it in my dictaphone player and I hit play.
Gonna be a crybaby, huh? No.
I was shocked. The Bartleban's tone in his voice was very matter-of-fact, totally calm and control, and this woman is screaming, begging to be killed. And I listened to 2 or 3 minutes. I stopped the tape and I just sat there and listened. I'm going, what did I just hear?
Later that day, Mertz played the tape for the other agents.
You could hear a woman screaming, crying, pleading for him to stop. It was extremely unsettling. I can't find words to adequately describe how terrible it was.
The agents knew there was more to the case. They could only speculate as to the terror de Bartleban inflicted on these women. The Secret Service was sifting through evidence found in a storage locker rented to James Mitchell de Bartleban. They had caught him passing fake bills, which they suspected he had printed himself. They still had not found his press, but had uncovered a chilling audio tape in which a woman was begging to be killed. Evidence de Bartleban was involved in something far more sinister. Desperate to find out exactly what de Bartleban was involved in, agents continued to pore over the evidence. They recovered hundreds of receipts from the storage locker, a few of them from other storage facilities. Special Agent Greg Mertz found a telling piece of evidence.
One of the significant things that I found was a postal money order receipt made out to a moving and storage facility in Manassas, Virginia.
The manager of the facility said she was leasing a locker to a J.R. Jones who worked for an electronics company. Jones was one of de Bartleban's aliases. Special Agent Mike Stevens again obtained a search warrant.
We found a storage unit and took the lock off it and opened it up. And as I recall, the Manassas storage unit was what we would call the mother lode.
Agents opened the locker to find at last de Bartleban's printing plant. A multi-lith 1250 offset press. Weighing almost 500 pounds, it was partly dismantled and surrounded by nearly $250,000 in fake $20 bills. Inside the locker, agents found a small arsenal of handguns and knives. The search also turned up what the agents called kits. They consisted of medical tape, pieces of rope, and lubricating jelly. As they looked farther, agents made a disturbing discovery. Photographs of women in sexually compromising positions. Hundreds of photographs. Some of the women had ligature marks on their wrists and tape residue around their eyes, indicating they had been tied up and blindfolded.
We became very alarmed when we saw the police equipment and the pornography, which included photographs, not professionally done, but photographs, home photographs, if you will, of naked women. And there was a lot of it. And from the photographs, I mean, you really couldn't tell if these were willing partners or not. But when you put the whole thing together, the entire context of what you found, it did not give you a good feeling.
The locker's contents were moved to the Washington field office. The storage units had yielded 144 boxes of potential evidence.
We had literally a mountain full of material. We had 30, 40 road maps, and some of them would have an X marked somewhere on the map, almost like a treasure map. We had women's clothing, women's underwear. We had women's little trinkets of jewelry. We had the police equipment. We had multiple license plates from various states. that obviously had been stolen.
Agents also recovered a number of women's driver's licenses and nearly 100 pairs of women's underwear. Some of them new, some looked worn. The Secret Service was organized to combat counterfeiting. They were not equipped to investigate the type of evidence they were finding.
The Secret Service, as part of the Treasury Department, for the most part, our criminal investigations are financial investigations.
Secret Service agent Jane Vizeris contacted the Federal Bureau of Investigation.
They indicated that you really don't have anything at this point. I mean, you don't have any evidence. I mean, if you came to us and said, you know, here, this was used in a homicide, well, maybe, or a kidnap case, you know, maybe they could do something with it. But we just had our suspicion, and we had this mountain of material.
Because the Secret Service could not specifically identify any victims, the FBI could not pursue the case. The Secret Service knew if they didn't investigate this case, no one else could.
It was extremely unusual and awkward because typically you have a crime and you solve the crime. Here, we believed we were looking at a lot of evidence, but we had no clue what the crime was, or where the crime occurred, or when the crime occurred. But we all had very strong convictions that certainly crimes had occurred.
Believe me.
The agents approached the assistant director about having the Secret Service investigate the case themselves. As they played one of the tapes, John Simpson, the director of the Secret Service, walked in.
Upon listening to the tapes, we heard some pretty chilling recordings of women being tortured, of women screaming, of women begging to be killed.
The director listened for a minute, shocked by what he heard on the tape. Simpson gave the investigation his full support.
I don't think I'd ever been more proud of my agency than at that moment when our director supported our refusal to let this case just fade away.
Give them anything they need.
The Secret Service was given clearance to expand their investigation beyond counterfeiting.
At this point, the investigation took a complete turn from our concerns over the counterfeiting to the concerns of these vicious crimes.
Their first task was to try and understand what they had. They cataloged each of the more than 10,000 bits of potential evidence. Receipts, newspaper clippings, photographs, letters, postage stamp marks, anything that might eventually be a clue.
It didn't take a whole lot of experience to determine that this person was involved in a multitude of criminal activity. We didn't know who the victims were, we didn't know exactly what, but we knew this was not a normal counterfeit case. We realized that we had a lot of work in front of us.
Once they had everything at their fingertips, they hoped clues would emerge as to the extent of de Barteleben's crimes. For years, the Secret Service tracked a counterfeiter through over 30 states. When they finally arrested James Mitchell de Barteleben, agents found a storage locker that held evidence of more sinister crimes. They began to piece together the mountain of evidence found in de Barteleben's storage lockers. They wanted to find out exactly what they had. Special Agent Jane Vizeris supervised the effort.
All we wanted to do was to be able to identify what we had in a coherent manner so that we could try to coordinate this with the rest of the law enforcement community to see if it somehow matched any of the unsolved cases that they may have had. One of the aspects of what we did early on was to try as quickly